Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hidden growth opportunities throughout online business. We're your host. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Brandon, and thanks for joining us for our latest episode. Today, we will be speaking with Lucas Carlson. He is the buyer of an Amazon Associates business from a marketplace and the CEO of CraftsmanFounder.com. Lucas was going to be going over how he used his windfall from selling his startup to invest in online businesses with us today.
That's right. So Lucas is going to go over how he used his capital windfall to then buy and grow more businesses. He'll bring us up to speed on how his Amazon Associates asset he bought from us quadrupled and, in his words, felt like winning the lottery. He'll also explain why he's bypassed traditional investments like index funds for digital assets and how he's created a lucrative long-term investment strategy.
Yeah, it's a lot of great insight in this episode, but we don't want to give away too much now. So let's dig into the interview and see what Lucas has to share with us. And at the end of this episode, we'll go over some of the best listings on the Empire Flippers marketplace that highlight the growth opportunities we've learned about here today. So let's get started.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this latest episode of the Opportunity Podcast. Today we've got Lucas Carlson on with us, and we're really excited to have him. Lucas, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's super great to have you here. We've obviously spoken to you some in the past, but not our whole audience doesn't know you yet. So let's start off with introductions. Can you just walk me through, who you are, a little bit about your background and how you got started in the online space?
Sure. So I've been building web applications since 1996. And at that time I was in middle school. And when I discovered that I could publish whatever I wanted and say whatever I wanted as a middle schooler in 1996, and anyone in the world could read it, I was completely hooked. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Never turned back, been programming and writing code and building applications ever since. And after college, I wrote some programming books and I built some startups for founders, but I'd always wanted to do my own startup. And eventually I found the right idea and it took off and raised about $10 million in venture capital. That company got acquired and I'm still programming these days, but I now have more resources than I used to. So I'm been looking into ways to be smart with that money. And that's what got me into buying online properties.
Oh, awesome. I definitely have quite a few follow-up questions there. We want to backtrack before we get too far away. I'm wondering, I think a lot of the audience would be interested to hear about your journey to have your own startup and raise venture capital. I think there's a lot of people interested in that kind of thing, but they have no idea how to go about doing it and maybe what the timeline looks like to get that done. So can you walk me through, to create your own startup, to raising that capital and then finally exiting, how many years did that take? And I don't know, what did that journey look like?
Yeah, so the honest answer is that journey took over 10 years because, as I said, I'd been wanting to do startups aspirationally since I was a teenager or even early college. And I had tried to do so many things. I think I bought my first website back in 2000 and I bought it off of Flippa. And the moment I bought it, it was pretty much my entire life savings at the time. And it started losing money the day after I bought it. And it didn't stop losing money. It was a horrible experience. And for a lot of people, that would be the end of their entrepreneurial journey. They fail and they give up and try to figure out something else to do with their life. But for me, that just was one step in the long path. And I never gave up. I always tried to do stuff. I tried many, many startup ideas that went nowhere. I tried to copy other people's startups ideas. I tried to make my own original ones. And no matter what I tried, over and over, I would spend months trying to build something, months trying to get anybody to sign up for it and failing, and then getting dejected and not giving up. I did that so many times, I can't even keep count of them. But during the whole time, I was also doing other stuff. I was working for other people. And so even though I was failing at my own startups on the side, I still had a day job. And then one day I kind of had an idea, and it seemed like every other idea. It didn't seem any better or worse than any other idea I had. One of the differences, instead of usually when I have an idea, I'm like, okay, this is the best idea ever. I'm going to spend the next 3 months of my spare time building it, and hopefully somebody will come. But this time I was too tired to start programming on it. So I just threw up a landing page, put a sentence describing the idea and an email capture form, and put a link on Hacker News. And the next morning I had about 3,000 people signed up for this service that I hadn't built. Unlike any other startup experience I've ever had in my life. Generally, I have an idea, I try to build a prototype, and then I struggle to even get 3 people to sign up. And all of a sudden I was sitting there and I had 3,000 people who all wanted access to this thing I hadn't built. And that was the beginning of the journey that led to raising 10 million and getting acquired. The whole time, that idea had a life of its own. It was never an idea that I needed to promote in order to get people to sign up. I never had to put up Google ads. I never had to do Facebook ads. I never had to do ads. People wanted it. It was a market need that really needed to get filled. And they were looking for me because it was that pressing of a need. And they found me in droves. And the only thing that I can say is that if I hadn't kept trying over 10 years and trying different ideas that didn't go anywhere, if I had given up any point along that line and not continued, I would never have reached that point of success. I don't think it matters too much from how long it took from having that startup idea to getting venture capital for it. I think too many people throw out the time of failed ideas. I would work until 3 a.m. and have nothing to show for it for years and years and years. And that's the real story of how a lot of entrepreneurs find success. It's after a lot of failure. There are obviously some exceptions. I think that the majority are more in my camp than are in Zuckerberg's camp.
That is an absolutely incredible story. I mean, you saw kind of both sides of the spectrum. You saw what it's like to start and fail, which is, the typical startup founder story, to seeing the other side of it, raising 10 million in venture capital, having this absolutely successful business that went on for an amazing exit. And I'm just curious hearing that. I mean, one day you post this idea and 3,000 people sign up the next day. How in the world do you handle that and tackle that? I mean, I'm sure that was like an, oh my God moment. How do I build a thing that doesn't exist? How long did it take you to finally sort of capitalize on the idea and start to deliver to the people who wanted it?
It took me about 3 or 4 weeks to build the prototype.
Wow.
By that time, I had doubled that list. So it was about 6,000 people. And I had done no more posting. I didn't go to Reddit. I didn't try to put Google ads. I was just trying to, as quickly as possible, fill the need for those 3,000 people. And by the time I checked again a month later, it was double.
That is just incredible. So it's so amazing that you were able to start this incredible startup just from that simple seed of putting it out there. Now, I would love to get a picture of, okay, so at the end of your journey, you've delivered on this product that the market needed. You have this amazing startup. It gets bought out by, Fortune 150 company.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, you have it off your plate, you've made your exit, and now you're free to decide what direction you want to take. What was that like? Was that a liberating moment for you? Was it scary for you? Just walk me through that a bit.
Yeah, it's terrifying. There's very little literature out there for what do you do once you have some money, once you have a windfall, and how do you deal with it? What steps do you take? You could throw it all into a stock market index fund like Vanguard, which is a lot of the common advice out on the internet. You could stand to be at the peak of the market. And if you are at the peak and hit a huge recession, it could be 10 or 20 years before you even break even. That terrified me. And when I sold the company, it seemed like the market was peaking. And that was 6 or 7 years ago. So 6 more years of bull market. Now it seems like it's just how much longer can the stock market keep going up and supporting that before it has a huge correction. It's very terrifying to just have a windfall and then stick it all in the stock market.
I'm so glad you brought that up because actually one of my next questions for you, because I found that element of a former interview you done with us super fascinating. The fact that you said, that you didn't want to stick it all in an index fund. I find that so interesting because so many people, especially like if you look around, say the financial independence community, they are just hardcore advocates for index funds. And, that is the safe investment. That is where you put your money. You're supposed to be in it for the long run. But then you come around and say, well, no, I'm actually seeing it a bit different. Like, this is a little bit scary to me. This could all just drop in a matter of years. And so the fact that you took sort of like another turn and decided for like a different investment strategy, and you went for online business, instead of the quote unquote safe investment. I don't know. Can you just, I guess, maybe walk me through your mindset there? And for the people out there who go, it's sort of index fund or die, and I couldn't possibly trust an asset like online business. That's too risky for me. Maybe what's the sort of advice or insight you would give to them?
Yeah, my advice is that it's an extremely limiting belief, and it's a very common one, that it's index funds or nothing. In reality, life is not so black and white, and everything you choose to do with your money is an investment. Whether you keep any in a bank account, you're trusting that bank account will keep your money safe, and you're trusting that inflation won't make your money disappear. So even keeping it in a checking account or a savings account is an investment and has pros and cons. Every investment has pros and cons. And when you open your eyes to the world that lies in between the two extremes of storing everything under your mattress and investing it all in an index fund, you find that the world becomes much more interesting, fun, enjoyable, and has much more learning. I love to learn. I love reading. I love having new ideas and critical thinking about old ideas. And so there's a huge opportunity for people to think outside the box. And when I look at an investment strategy, a holistic investment strategy, not just what am I going to do with my investment money, but what am I going to do with my life money strategy? It becomes very, very fun and interesting to think about because I see the opportunities of investment on a spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum is 100% active investments. On the other side of the spectrum is 100% passive investments. So on the active investments, 100% active, that's your job. And in your job, you are turning your time into money 100% of the time. You don't ever have to put money into your job to get more money. You only put your time into your job. So it's 100% active, but it's an investment of your time to get money. On the other opposite end is an index fund sort of investment where you are sending your money out to make you more money, and it's completely passive. And so those are two extremes of a rainbow. And when people refuse to look at any color in between, I can't understand that because there is such a wide variety of options in between. There's so many colors on this spectrum. And the way I like to look at it is sort of like a waterfall where you can pick investments that have a blend of active and passive amounts of investment. So it can have a blend of time and effort versus the money you put in. So for example, if you look at investing in real estate is more active than investing in a stock market index. You have to find the house, you have to do inspections. If somebody leaves the house or ruins the house, you have to deal with insurance and stuff like that. So there's more things to do. However, it's not a full-time job. If you're just managing one investment property or 5 investment properties, that does not take 40-hour work week. That might take 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month. So it has a little bit of activity, let's say 1 hour a month. So it's not completely passive. It's maybe 95% passive and 5% active. If you look at other kinds of investments like websites you can approach in a lot of different activity levels. You can be hands-on, active, and decide, okay, I'm going to build a website from scratch, and that becomes a full-time active sort of investment because you are spending your time. Are you spending 40 hours a week? You don't have to. You could do it on the weekends. So it does not have to be an entire job. You don't have to quit your day job to have an investment in web investments. Or you could buy an existing website that is already making money and doesn't need a lot of time and effort to get it up and running. It may need less time to maintain it. So you might be saying, okay, I want something that's maybe 50% active and 50% passive. So it's already set up and cranking out cash. Yeah, I have to spend an hour a week making sure that new content gets written and new backlinks are going up. But again, it's not a full-time job, but it's also not a completely passive investment. You have to watch it, you have to maintain it. And there are risks. There are risks that when you have a website, you could get penalized by Google, you could get kicked off Amazon, they could change their rates. All of these things have happened to me. And so there are risks involved, especially when you're dealing with active investments. You could own a house that gets hit by a tornado. And so thinking about how to mitigate those risks is, again, part of the active process of being an active investor rather than a passive one. But the gains can be wildly better than a passive investment, a 100% passive investment, like something in the stock market. If you're lucky, maybe you're looking at like 10, 12% returns year over year. With a website, you could be easily looking at 100% returns year over year. And that's unthinkable by the standards of investing in the stock market. It's even hard to think of that from the standards of investing in real estate. But it's not only feasible, I know multiple people that are doing the same as me and making 100% returns year over year investing in websites. Are there risks? Absolutely. Do I have to put some time in? Yes. But is it a full-time job? No. In fact, I blend my investments. So I still have a full-time job that pays me a salary. So that's my 100% active investment. I have a portfolio of websites, which I bought so that they already have that passive aspect and I just have to maintain. And that's my next most active investment. And then I have a series of investments that have lower amounts, more passivity, less activity. And the money that comes in from the active side of the spectrum eventually funnels its way, waterfalls its way down into more passive investments. The passive ones have smaller returns, but I have to spend less time doing them. And over time, as that bucket grows, the true promise of passive income comes to fruition. But you don't have to just throw all your money into a 100% passive investment. You can waterfall your investments into passive investments over time, which has been working out great for me.
Yeah, it's funny. There's so many comments that I want to keep making on what you've just said. I don't want to deter too much from where you're going. I guess one note you had, I love the way you describe investments as being colorful and fun. Like this, there's the broad spectrum, like you said, and people are really sort of missing it when they're looking at things black and white. I know you described some of the pros of online businesses in some way, but is there anything about online entrepreneurship that would be, say, fun and colorful to you?
Yeah, I mean, if I'd say that the fun, colorful aspects of investing come from what you find enjoyable in life. I have always been attracted to technology, but I know people that can't stand technology. I know people who would much prefer to interact with other people all day long instead of staring at a screen. For them, a colorful, fun investment might be buying a franchise in Krispy Kreme or buying a franchise of McDonald's, where you're dealing with people every single day and have that person-to-person interaction. Or maybe you don't like to interact with people and you don't like staring at computer screens. Maybe you buy a laundromat or real estate. So there's options for all types of people out there on the spectrum of investing. And the only way to know what you're going to find enjoyable is to try stuff, to explore, to read books from people who have done it and see if that sounds good, if it sounds fun. In figuring out which investments on the colorful spectrum I enjoy, I tried many, many different cash flowing assets. And the first rental property that I bought, as soon as it closed, the tenant decided to move out, which was fine. But then right after that, squatters moved in, and they were druggy squatters who completely destroyed the house. At that point, I had read probably a dozen books on rental real estate properties. I had never read about how do you deal with druggies squatting and destroying your rental property. So you're never going to get a full picture of what one type of investment looks at like just by reading books. You got to get your feet wet. You have to try different things, and it might turn out you don't like it. So I think that exploring and having fun with the exploring process is a great part of investment strategy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Lucas. And like you had mentioned, getting your hands dirty and getting the experience, like firsthand in running a business and seeing what types of challenges might arise and how you can overcome those challenges is really an important part to, not only growing as a business owner, but also growing through your career and establishing which investments are really worth your time in the active sense. And that also leads me into thinking what your take is on this, Lucas. So you've built several startups, as you had mentioned, a lot of them failed. What do you feel is maybe some of the benefits to someone buying an established online investment, such as yourself, as what you had done on our marketplace? So what do you feel are the benefits in buying something already established over starting something from scratch?
Yeah, I would say that the benefits are that there is an existing amount of income that you can use to reinvest in the business. A lot of these sites, you could theoretically not reinvest anything. You could theoretically just buy a site and let it play out as it will until it stops cash flowing. But a lot of these sites, you want to make sure to protect your investment by reinvesting in quality content, reinvesting in backlinks, reinvesting in ways to maintain, thinking about ways to expand the business. Maybe it's adding advertisements. Maybe it is either building or acquiring a dropshipping business that works with your content site, or vice versa. If you have a dropshipping business, buying a content site that funnels into your dropshipping business. And so when you buy a site that's pre-built, there's obviously pros and cons. But a lot of pros are that you have more flexibility with what you can do with it and how quickly you can start doing things. I have both built sites from scratch and bought them. When I build them from scratch, it can take many, many months. It can take 6 to 9 months where it's basically getting no traffic at all. And I've put all this time and effort into content creation and design, and it doesn't feel like it's paying off. And so obviously you can't hit the ground running if you're starting from scratch. But on the other hand, you might not have the resources to buy a website right now. It might be too expensive, especially because you might want to start with a site that is cash flowing enough that it pays for the expenses of running and maintaining and growing it. And so that can be a pretty expensive site. And so you might not have that cash today, but you might want to start getting into website investing. And just like in real estate, there are different kinds of website investors. There are some website investors specialize in starting sites from scratch and then going and selling them on a brokerage. Others, like me, like to buy existing quality businesses, nurture them, and I don't plan on selling them ever. I'm the opposite of a flipper. Some people like to buy sites, fix them up, and then sell them again. My plan is to build a portfolio of sites, never sell them ever, because they're my golden geese. Why would I sell a golden goose that just keeps giving me golden eggs? To me, I wouldn't know where to put that money that I'd get after selling the site. To me, there's no investment that is got better returns than content sites that I've found yet. And so I don't know what I would buy with the money from the proceeds. So instead, the way I think about it is I take the extra cash flow from the content sites. Some of it goes back to buying more content sites. Others go into more passive investments.
Okay. Yeah, that's really a smart strategy that you have. And like you had mentioned before, making sure that you understand that there is a broad spectrum in investments and some are going to require your active time and passive time. And you've found kind of your, I guess you could say your niche with content sites, and holding on to them as long-term investments. And I think that's really interesting to see. As you mentioned, we do talk to quite a few sellers that are looking to just build up a business and then sell it or flip it. But you're taking a different approach. And I think that is really interesting to see. And then I'm also curious, you had mentioned earlier, so obviously the Amazon Associates business you purchased from our marketplace wasn't the first business that you purchased. You had mentioned earlier that you purchased the site from Flippa, I believe. Was that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And then you said things didn't go as well as you would hope with that business. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened with that, or maybe some of the issues that came about?
Yeah. So at that time in my life, I didn't have a lot of free money. So I pretty much used all my life savings at the time, which didn't amount to much. So I got a lower quality site that was selling for a cheap multiple. Because it was selling for a cheap multiple at the time, I didn't understand why, because I thought, oh, this thing's making money. Why is it selling for so cheap? Well, now in retrospect, it was selling for a cheap multiple because the business was going down. Like if you look at the trajectory of its revenue, it was going down over time. And I thought, oh, great, I'll come in and I'm a programmer, so I'm going to fix it up and then I'll turn this around and the revenue will start going up as soon as I turn it around. And for some people that works out. For me, it did not. I spent a lot of time and effort trying to turn it around, but it continued its trajectory downwards. So now when I look for sites that are on an upward trajectory, that are naturally over time steadily increasing in revenues instead of decreasing in revenues. And I might pay a premium for that, but I also feel like I'm buying quality that hopefully, and it has so far, continued to go up in revenues after the purchase. That's to offset the premium that I'm paying for that kind of investment. Is the nice thing is when the revenues continue to grow after the acquisition, that's kind of a dream scenario.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot more of an active role, I guess, in order to build up one of the smaller businesses, especially if it's declining and obviously thinking there's that opportunity in the hiding with this business. And then come to find out, no, it's just going to take way too much effort and way too much capital to even get it to the level that you were anticipating. It was really interesting to learn from you about and to see with some of the other brokers and the types of businesses that they're offering on their marketplaces. So I'm curious though, so this business that you purchased didn't work out as well as you had hoped. What turned your mentality around to think, okay, you know what, let me try out Empire Flippers. They have a lot of listings on their marketplace and acquire a business through them. What was it mentally that made you decide to still take that initial leap?
Yeah, one thing was simply realizing that a single experience is not indicative of necessarily all future experiences. So even though I had a bad experience buying a website, it took me a while to get comfortable again, almost 20 years before I bought a second site. But I came to realize just because I had one bad experience doesn't mean that they're all going to necessarily be bad experiences. Since the first purchase, the whole space has matured significantly and continues to mature. And in 5-10 more years, it's probably going to mature a whole lot more. And probably multiples will be quite a lot higher as it matures as well. And so the part of it was realizing that just one bad experience doesn't necessarily mean it's all bad experiences. Another part is the market matured. Another part is that Empire Flippers does a great job of pre-vetting the sites that they sell. Honestly, a huge portion of what's still on Flippa today is just junk, and it's really hard to sift through. And I don't have to sift through stuff on Empire Flippers. It's pre-sifted. So that's a lot nicer to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we constantly get a lot of kudos and remarks on for having a vetting team, having a migrations team. We do take a lot of the back end stress on making sure that your time is not being wasted in doing due diligence on these businesses because we've already taken that initial step for you vetting the listings. So yeah, it's great to hear that you also enjoy having that feature on our marketplace. And so I'm curious, how was it that you came about to finding Empire Flippers? Were you just, come to find out you had a bad experience with Flippa? Now you're just kind of doing some research on what other brokers are out there that might offer better quality potential listings, or was there another route that you went about to finding us?
No, that's the route.
Okay. Yeah, it's really great to hear.
Yeah, well, on that note, so you found Empire Flippers, you came back, you wanted to try again. I want to get introduced to the business that you bought from us. So walk me through kind of being on our marketplace and finding the business that you went, okay, this is the right one for me. Walk me through that. How did you know that was the right asset for you? What stuck out to you about it?
Yeah, when I was browsing for an opportunity for a purchase, I wanted a business that had a long track record of good cash flows and growing cash flows. I wanted a business that wasn't just built, 6, 9, 12 months ago. I wanted one that's been around for a while, has some staying power, and still had opportunities. I think that when I look for websites, I want one that has a great financial track record, but is also a little bit on the uglier side, a little bit less refined, something that hasn't been polished by an SEO expert, something that leaves room for improvement. I like to buy content sites that don't have advertisements so that I can add advertisements and pretty much instantly add some extra revenue on top. And a website flipper might buy sites like that, add some advertisements, wait for 6 months, and then resell it with the advertisements and then profit on the difference. For me, it's just about making the most of my investments that I plan to hold indefinitely. I feel like, especially because I believe that the future of the whole website investing market is going to mature more in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. If I'm right about that, then multiples are probably going to be near historic lows for the foreseeable future. Right now, if website investing is on an upward trajectory, and if it is becoming more and more established, then if you believe that, you have to believe that website multiples are never going to be this low again in history, that this will be the best price as long as you're considering to not sell, to not flip. And so for me, I like to find opportunities where I feel like I can increase the revenues, which effectively for me decreases the multiple. So it might be I'm buying a website at a premium, but it's only a premium on the previous revenues. If you consider the improvements that you can make by turning on advertisements, by improving conversion rates, everything you can do decreases that multiple and increases your ROI, which makes it such a wonderful sort of investment.
Yeah, I love your perspective on that because I think, like Brendan had pointed out before, it's not something that we hear often. You get more people coming in really passionate about flipping and go, that's where the money is and that's where my strategy is. I think rarely you get enough people who want to hang on and go, wait a minute, actually, this is the time to be investing in digital assets before, these multiples go up, before it's harder to get in. And getting in now means that this asset that I have is going to go up in value over time. I think that's really unique. And I think in your position, having your technological background, venture capital background and all this, the fact that you chose this investment vehicle is super telling and interesting. Like you said, that you can get 100% year over year. And, those sort of returns just are outlandish. You can't imagine them any other sort of investment. I feel like, that kind of leads me to where I want to go next. So I want to make sure I'm understanding where you are with the quote unquote ugly asset. So you looked for a site that was ugly, that had a good foundation, that you could do a lot with. How did that work out for you? And where is the business today?
Yeah, so it worked out incredibly well. I mean, my first online business purchasing was a horrible nightmare. My second one was like winning the lottery. It was completely the opposite. And part of that was when I saw the website come up on Empire Flippers, it had been on the market for a couple weeks before I bought it. So it was not like I bought it the day that it came up. It had been around. It was on the uglier side. And when I went to it, when I got the prospectus and I clicked on the link, I was on my phone. So I browsed around on the website and I tried to click on the affiliate links on my phone, at least where I thought they would be. Like, for example, I would try to click on the product image and the product image was not linked to the product. I thought, if I'm trying to do that, then probably a huge portion of website visitors are also on mobile, can't get to these products on Amazon and buy them. And it turns out after the acquisition, that was the first thing I did, is I made all the images linkable to the products. And I was completely right. That conversion rate pretty much doubled the revenues the week after I had purchased the site, which was beyond my expectations. With a few other tweaks and improvements, I was able to double the revenues a second time. So 4 times the revenue of when I bought it. And since then, the revenues have continued to drifted upwards and upwards. And the site's been just a wonderful experience.
Wow. If I can make a comment like real fast, I think it's just kind of incredible to hear you talk about getting this business and equating it to feeling like you've won the lottery. You've had some amazing success already. You managed to build an incredible startup that, went for a profitable exit, and you had your windfall. I don't know. I mean, perhaps in the other one, I'm sure it's a very different sort of feeling, but like to hear you say, but when I went for the online investment, that felt like winning the lottery. It just went really well is super interesting because it almost felt like maybe you hit the peak, but then, you just managed to like break past that again. I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting here. Don't know if any of that resonates or not.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I'm so excited by having the success in online websites is because as a cash flowing mechanism, as a cash flowing investment, it's just unbelievable how quickly you can make such significant cash flows with website investing. And when you look at like a savings account, you'd be lucky to get 1%. It's much likely to be much lower than 1% of interest per year. So it's like if you have $100,000 to put somewhere, you could get $1,000 a year by sticking it in a high interest savings account at this point. And you could take that $100,000 and put it into the right website, and that website's making $100,000 a year. It doesn't sound real, but it's not only happened to me, it's happened to many other people who have invested in websites.
Yeah, that's such a great opportunity. And to hear firsthand real life experience from yourself and your friends that are seeing these types of returns and getting these ROI numbers that you're talking about, it's really great to kind of fortify what we keep talking about here at Empire Flippers and how amazing these types of investments can be. And so you'd mentioned, so you had quadrupled your monthly net profits almost after making a few adjustments. What are some of the main adjustments you made to the site? That way our listeners can kind of get an idea of, what it is that they could possibly improve on their sites to get some similar returns.
Yeah, I'd say that it's very highly dependent on each individual site. I've seen sites that were on Empire Flippers that were highly polished, worked really well, and had very little room for improvement. And so doing a conversion rate audit on a site like that would yield probably no results because the person selling it has already done that. So what you have to look for are opportunities where you can bring expertise of yourself. Like when I bought the site, I knew that I could fix the problem that images were not linked. And so when I saw a site where images weren't linked and it was not working well on mobile browsers, I knew exactly what I needed to do to fix that. And I had a hunch that since mobile traffic is almost half of the traffic from the site, that would have the potential to double revenues because mobile was pretty much getting ignored. And so in that particular site, looking for how well the site performed on mobile in usability was one of the biggest drivers. The table layout was not responsive in its design. So you'd see a list of competing products on a page, but then you couldn't actually even get to the data. You couldn't see the title of the product because the overflow wasn't working correctly on the CSS for the table.
Okay. So you went in with this business, you improved some of the on-page usability, as you had mentioned, that your traffic was experiencing. And then you also did some conversion rate optimization through that. Was that pretty much a majority of the changes that you made to the business in order to see these types of returns?
Yeah. The other thing is that a lot of content sites being sold on any brokerage, when I started buying websites a few years ago, the way that the brokerages worked is that net profit was driving the multiple. So a lot of sellers of websites wanted to maximize the net profit. In order to maximize the net profit, they'd spend as little as possible on new content. So what that meant was, at that point in time in history, many sites being sold had not been updated in 9 months because they didn't want it to affect the bottom line. And so they wanted to maximize the net profit multiple. Since then, there have been changes in how you calculate the net profit so that content may or may not be included in that net profit figures to kind of offset this exact problem. But what that led to was a lot of stale sites being sold. And then as soon as I started to refresh the content and add new content, Google saw that the site was now active again after 9 to 12 months of having been dormant. And that gave another boost.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of nice that you were just kind of positioned here in the right possible manner to come in, make these smaller tweaks, and then also improving the SEO, the CRO on the page to really get these returns. And that's awesome. I know you've owned this business now for several years, Lucas. So I'm curious, just recently we had the Amazon Associates commission change. How has that affected your bottom line or maybe your margins with this business? Or how were you able to maybe overcome that update with their commission structure?
Yeah, that did hit me. I was very lucky with this particular site, not so lucky with another one. But with this site that I bought, even though Amazon cut the commissions in half, there were two other things that also happened simultaneously. With the COVID lockdowns, people were shopping online more than ever. Traffic was hitting all-time highs to these content sites for people who wanted to buy the stuff that we were selling. So even though the commission was cut in half, traffic was almost double. And because I had added advertisements, that extra traffic not only made up for the commission cut from point of view of volume, the extra traffic also drove advertisement revenues to all-time highs, and they continue going up for me. So not all my online businesses have been this lucky, but this particular one has fared very well this year.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'm certainly glad that some of the storms that have come through for Amazon Associates, business owners in particular, that you've been able to fare okay. I guess on that note, I think that's probably something that a lot of newbies would have in mind. A lot of first-time buyers may want to get into the content game, but go, oh my gosh, I'm terrified of commission updates or algorithm changes and this and that. But what advice would you have for first-time buyers who would like to get in, but maybe holding fears or concerns?
Yeah, my advice there is if you aren't ready to commit a large amount of time or money, start with a small amount and just get your feet wet. Buy a small starter site and just operate it, because until you get your feet wet, you're not going to know. For people like me, I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy thinking about how I can improve things, thinking about what can I do to diversify these investments. What new revenue potentials can I have? Can I start a dropshipping business around it? Can I acquire a dropshipping business around it? Can I start a YouTube channel and use the existing SEO-driven traffic to bump my YouTube channel pretty much instantly, which I did. And I'm very close to getting enough subscribers to my YouTube channel in order to get YouTube advertisements. There's just so many things you can do with a website if you are interested in the space. For me, when things happen like a commission change or a Google algorithm change, all that is an opportunity for you to reinvent, to rethink. And there are so many people in the space who are not going to spend the time to come up with ideas, who are not going to start their YouTube channel, who are not going to start a dropshipping business. And they're just going to let their commission and revenues fall in half and not do anything about it. That clears the field for you. That's an opportunity for you to expand your market share, to grow your business. Everyone's getting hit with it. It's not just you. So if you're just sitting back and taking it, then yeah, your investment could suffer quite a lot. But really, if you look at it as an opportunity to get creative, it's more fun. It's more interesting. And it's endlessly fun for people who love to learn.
Yeah, it's super relevant what you just said. There's an opportunity in that, in actually facing the fear and riding the wave. And when the challenges come, it clears the field of the people who don't want to face it or are too afraid to face it, kind of like you mentioned. I just think that's such an important thing to note, that sure, like with any investment, there will be those challenges, but I mean, if you're not going to jump in and try, then you're never going to win either.
Yeah, and another important note there is, what do you do if you invested in a stock market index and it drops 80%?
Mm-hmm.
You can't apply your own creativity at all. There's absolutely nothing you can do because you have made it 100% passive investment, which means that you have no recourse. You have no ability to step in and do a thing about it. The whole spectrum of investment opportunities allows for creativity, allows for you to have an impact. And there are some people who don't like to learn, who don't like to spend time on their investments, and that's fine for them. But if you one of those people, there's so much more investing can be such a fun pastime.
I'm so glad to hear you say all this. It feels very validating on a personal level, hearing you talk about it in this different way and go, well, creativity won't help you. Nothing can save you when your index fund drops 80%. I had gone to like a financial independence meeting last time I was in the US just to see what it was like, just to see what investments people were talking about. And when I sort of raised my hand and made a suggestion about online businesses, I mean, it was looked at like the crazy person in the room. I just think it was either a mix of people really just don't know of it as an investment vehicle, or it's the absolutely afraid and, investments are black and white. We're talking about real estate, we're talking about index funds, and that's it here. And so to hear someone like you who actually has come in and looking at it long term and it's work and it's getting these returns. Yeah, I guess it's super validating in a way. Of course, we know that every day we're working at Empire Flippers and we know all this to be true. We see it all the time, but you don't get as many people coming in and saying, no, it really is my long-term investment strategy. And there's just a different way. So yeah, I want to say thank you. You're making me feel better about that crazy person moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the vast, overwhelming majority of people who say indexing is the only thing you should do, I see those people as crazy. I see those people as having taken other people's word for it and not thought for themselves and asked themselves questions like, is that how Warren Buffett made his money? Did he just stick some money in an index fund and become one of the world's wealthiest people? Because he was Benjamin Graham's student, and Benjamin Graham was all about this kind of thing. Is that what Warren Buffett did? No. Warren Buffett has been an active investor his entire life. He has done at the corporate level what we're talking about doing at the website level. He has looked for opportunities. He has looked for companies that had great cash flow, but were a little ugly, were forgotten, but were financially solid and never likely to go under. That's just like picking the right website to buy. And that's how he made his money. He has been an active investor his entire life. So it seems crazy to me that you just say that there's only one way to do it when there are so many ways to do it. And you look at people, I mean, there's a great book called The Millionaire Fastlane. And I hate the title. I think it's a corny title that sounds gimmicky, sounds cheap, but it's a great book. And the content of the book is not nearly as corny and cheap as the title is. And it makes a point early on, which I think is really good, is that how many people do you know that are young and financially independent from investing in stock indexes? And if that's what you want to model yourself after, go for it. But like, how many young millionaires do you know who took an active approach, who started a company, who bought a company and made something bigger from that company and then sold it or didn't sell it and living off the cash flows? There's so much more opportunity when you look past the general advice. And is it risky? Of course it's risky. But the risks involved in going with the generic advice are very, very real and very, very often not talked about at all. So what I mean is, can you stick some money aside? Can you put 10% of your income into a tax-deferred IRA that invests in Vanguard index funds for your entire life and become a millionaire? Sure. Yes, you can. Has that happened? Yes. I know many people for whom that has worked out. But the risks involved there are very real and very often completely ignored. Ignored by financial advisors, ignored by the people who write books, ignored by the people who expound these things, ignored by the people that put you down for thinking outside the box. And the risks are you even going to make it to the point where you become the millionaire? Are you going to make it to 70 years old? There's no guarantee that you will. So you're sticking aside 10% of your money month after month, year after year, with the hopes that maybe by the time you're 70, you'll be a millionaire. What if you never make it? You've slaved away for nothing. You've slaved away and stuck it in a pile that you never got to enjoy. That sounds pretty sucky. What if you are 69, retiring in a year, and the stock market plummets 80%? Even though the advisors told you to move some into bonds to make it less risky, you thought, we're in a bull market, and then you get hit. and then you lose it all. And now you don't have anything to show for it, and you don't have any recourse. And then the risk of just simply being old. How much can you enjoy being a millionaire when you're 70 than when you're 35? It's hard to picture like going and traveling Greek islands when you're 70 is 2,000 times harder than traveling the Greek islands when you're 35. But you don't think of that. You don't think of, oh, well, like even if I do make it to 70 years old and I am a millionaire, can I enjoy my money the way I want to when I'm 70 years old? Can I travel the world? Certainly not in comfort. You won't be able to enjoy the experiences in the same way as when you're young. So you're buying a ticket for a dream that may never come true. And even if it does come true, is probably not nearly as dreamy as it sounds right now. Whereas with investing in something like websites, is there a risk that the website goes under with a Google algorithm update? Absolutely. Could you be wiped out and lose your savings? Yes, that does happen. And it's really tough. But is there the chance that you could become financially independent at the age 35 with website investing? Absolutely there is. And there's just no chance of that with index investing. So you have to weigh the pros and the cons. You know, do you want the ability to have the chance to become financially independent and travel the Greek islands at 35? Or do you want the chance of surviving to 70 and hoping that your knees can keep you up for a few hours so you can see the Colosseum?
I could not agree more, for sure. I can definitely say that we definitely share that mentality, Brendan and I, in the way that we live our lives and, you know, have chosen an unconventional path, doing the remote work and digital nomading and making sure that we're getting kind of that life squeezed in, you know, when you're meant to be saving it all for later, but it doesn't have to be that way. You know, thinking, you just mentioned a book, The Millionaire Fastlane, I think is what you said, that it really talks about like how you don't see young millionaires. And I couldn't agree more, where it's like, especially sort of getting in.
You see plenty of young millionaires, just none that got their millions investing in index funds.
Yes, exactly. And so that actually makes me think of another book that I'd been reading, kind of bigger in the financial independence community. The author is Grant Sabatier, and it's called Financial Freedom, A Proven Path to All the Money You'll Ever Need. And it's interesting because, I mean, he went from, you know, like $2 or negative dollars in his bank account to a millionaire, I think 5 years later. And I think he managed to do this by the time he's, you know, early 30s or something like that. And it is like you're saying, where it's like, you know, he didn't get there from investing in index funds. Now he talks about investing in index funds, obviously as a way of compounding, you know, money up front and then knowing that you can live off it later. But the whole reason he got there was taking huge risks and coming up with, you know, investing in every single way that he could, whether it was, you know, investing money from his dog walking or like teaching himself how to build websites and doing that for people and basically creating all his own businesses. It's the risky ventures, the striking out on your own and doing it on your own that actually allows you to put enough money in up front that, okay, sure, then an index fund is going to work for you. You will have that money to maybe live off and enjoy for a while. But yeah, certainly you're not going to get there by just putting the money in an index fund now. That is you're hedging a bet, whether you like to look at it that way or not. It's like you said, you're hedging a bet that you're going to live to 70 and enjoy it. And then by that time, are you really going to enjoy it? You're using it to like get by in your old age, not really live, you know, to the same caliber, as you said. So I really couldn't agree more. And it definitely reflects a lot of the reading that I have seen, where it's like, I do want to be, while I respect the notion of, you know, these really quote unquote stable investments, you are missing the biggest thing in life, which is time. And to really get the most out of your time now, while you have, you know, probably the most ability in your life, you might have to take some risks, including doing something like buying or building your own online business. So, I mean, I digress. Clearly, it's like worked out for you. And I think, you know, I guess I want to wrap up here because I love your take on how it's a reflective of your sort of ethos on life and lifestyle. But I guess to sort of close, like, what has this business and investment, I mean, how has this impacted your life? Can that be sort of deduced into one thing, or is it almost too hard to explain?
No, I mean, before investing in websites, I had come into a windfall, but I was living life cash flow negative. What I mean to say is that I still had to pay for mortgage, still had to pay for food, And my monthly living expenses outweighed my monthly income. Not in the sense of my active income. My active income obviously paid for living expenses, but in more passive income. I say more passive because it's not 100% passive, and nor do I want it to be. But after getting into buying websites, my cash flow on more passive investments now more than covers my lifestyle, which has never happened before in my life. And it took years after the windfall to get to that point. Yes, I was sitting on some money, but it wasn't working for me, nor was it enough to just stick it in an index fund and live off the dividends. And so you might come across a windfall in all sorts of ways in life. And that windfall might be really nice, but it might not be able to just live off the dividends sort of income. And that doesn't mean that it's necessarily impossible to live life off the dividends. You just have to look at the spectrum of investments a little bit differently than the beaten path.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Lucas. And taking a different approach or a different mentality to the full spectrum of investments that are out there. And again, not thinking everything is all black and white is really the best opportunity for people that are wanting to get into this industry is, thinking outside of the box. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up a majority of our questions for this call, Lucas. We do have a few last rapid fire questions for you to wrap this up. The first one being, so what do you feel, if you can deduce this into a simplistic answer, but what do you feel is the secret sauce to success as a brand new buyer?
I would say that success as a brand new buyer comes from making sure that websites are the kind of investment that you want to make by dipping your toes in as much as possible. And that might be by buying a small starter site. It might be by creating your own site from scratch. Even if you know that that site might never make any money, just to go through the motions of what it'll take to run a site, if you've never done it before, is important, because you don't want to make a large cash investment if you have no idea whether you're cut out for it. So I would say that start small if you've not had background and experience running content sites before.
Awesome. So you already mentioned one book that really helped you out, but what would you say are your top 3, say, tools, books, anything that helped you while owning this business?
I would say that The Millionaire Fastlane is a must-read. I would say that another must-read is a classic that is oldie but goodie, still completely relevant today, is The Richest Man in Babylon. I think the thoughts in that book as relevant, if not more relevant today than ever. And then another of my favorite books that's kind of relevant to this kind of investing is How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis. The other book that I just wanted to mention is Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. I think that is also a overlooked and underappreciated finance book once you have significant cash flows from things like having a website business.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to look into those and make sure that we provide those resources for our audience as well in the description. And the final question to wrap this up for you, Lucas, is out of owning online businesses now for several years, what's been the funniest or maybe the weirdest moment you've experienced as an online business owner?
Nothing comes to mind.
Okay. That's good that things have worked out,
pretty well.
Straightforward way. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I want to tell you, thank you so much, for coming on with us today. This has been amazing. And I've certainly loved hearing your insight on your online business investment strategy. I certainly hope people listen to this and take notes and maybe consider, if they've been looking at investments black and white, if they can make things a little bit more fun and colorful, as you mentioned. And certainly congratulations on things going so well with the site. And, after all the starts and stops with your startups, that you managed to launch your startup, your Dream One, and having it really work out. It's fantastic.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on again,
you.
Lucas. We really appreciate it. And it's awesome talking to you as well.
Same here.
Hey everyone, as promised, now that we've wrapped up another episode and learned about how online business can be used as long-term investment opportunities, we wanted to connect you with some of the best opportunities in the content space on our marketplace live today. So first we have listing 48080, which is a dropshipping business in the sports niche. And it does include 2 Shopify sites that produce made-to-order sports apparel and accessories. So awesome opportunity for someone to come in and scale this business if they, already have a little bit of background with drop shipping, or maybe perhaps, some marketing outreach, or maybe even email outreach experience under their belt already, to really come in and broaden their audience and maybe even expand into other sub niche or other drop shipped items within sub niches for this actual business. What's great about this list, and a great opportunity for someone with that experience as well, is it does already have an email list with over 24,000 subscribers in the US market and over 14,000 subscribers in Australia. So along with the 2 domains that are included, they do both cover those marketplaces as well. So you'll have a .com and a .au domain included with this listing, which really gives you, the opportunity to grow a business in not just one marketplace, but expand in multiple marketplaces internationally, and then also optimize the business backend to improve your margins, should your products be doing really well at the same time, marketing the products in multiple markets. Now, something that the seller has already set up for you as well is they have one designer that they have hired through Upwork and a few VAs that are in the Philippines that handle a lot of the customer support requests. So not a lot is really required from you in a sweat equity sense that you would need to be putting an extra amount of effort or work into this. Say if you already have a full-time job, this is really something that can give you kind of that mix in between the active and passive investment opportunity, where it's not 100% passive, but it's not also requiring you to work more than 20 hours a week to maintain this business. Yeah, so what do you have to say about this listing as well, Sarah? Do you think this is a great opportunity for someone to come in and scale as a long-term investment strategy?
Yeah, definitely, Brandon. I think that this business does have scalability. And, I like your point about this asset not taking up too much of your time. It's why people get into online businesses. They want that passive element, but then, the choice to make it as active as they would like it to be, but still being able to reap excellent ROI, as Lucas pointed out. I'd say on the minimal work front, I have a listing kind of in that same vein. So listing 48393. An Amazon Associates affiliate and display advertising business created in October 2016 in the outdoors niche. What's really great about this business is it's well diversified, so it's going to stand strong against any one update or, commission change that could change revenue. To me, it seems like it would make an excellent long-term asset, something that would really stand strong within a portfolio. With this business in particular, things have already been well optimized. Traffic is well spread out throughout the business, throughout the site. I love that social and paid traffic, they're already in place bringing in traffic to the site without a lot of sweat equity going into it like we had discussed before. And most importantly, this business is growing. It's a good time to get in on an asset that's growing year on year and growing in traffic. Those are just all good signs that this is the best time to be, the buyer for this asset. I guess one note on this business does experience seasonality, but as we've discussed previously on the podcast, seasonality is something that is easy to overcome. As long as you're setting it up right. If you have the business in your portfolio with other websites, you could be using a seasonal spike to prop up your portfolio and reap dividends during one part of the year and then use your other businesses to support its low seasons throughout the year. So yeah, if you have the right mindset, this asset could make a brilliant addition to a portfolio. And, as we've discussed, I think this business has scalability without sweat equity, just like your business that you mentioned before, Brandon, has as well. So I think we've got 2 excellent choices here today. And I think that just about wraps up our listings for this episode. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in to this episode of the Opportunity Podcast. We hope you've gained some valuable insight to the opportunities that digital acquisitions offer. Make sure to click the link in the description or visit empireflippers.com/marketplace to learn more about these businesses or other listings currently live on our platform. And if you've enjoyed the episode, be sure to leave a comment and subscribe to this channel for more great content that'll be released soon. So until next time, we're your hosts, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Opportunity Podcast.